This is a toy ray gun made out of plastic. And this is a large rubber spider. And if you'd been playing with both of these things back in the 1980s, there's a good chance that you had been trying to stop Boris. Now, unfortunately, my Boriss is defective. So on today's Retro Tech Repair, we're going to be trying to fix my Corgi Stop Boris that I bought spares or repair on eBay. So then here is our Stop Boris. It's a little bit tatty, as we can see, but we'll take a look around the box in a second. For now, let's take a look at the eBay listing. Corgi Stop Boris, 4 parts or not working. I paid £25 and $6.95 shipping. See how the seller described it. 4 parts not working Corgi Stop Boris. Sadly not working. The gun seems to work, however, as the red light comes on when pressing the trigger. Boris, however, does not work. Fully boxed with new batteries in good condition despite not working. All original parts and accessories, including card ramp, are present. Hopefully this will suit someone as a bit of a project. So a couple of things struck me as being interesting about this. First off, it still has the original price label on it, and it's from Exeter's Pram and Toy Shop. So I googled Exeter's Pram and Toy Shop and found this page on toyshopuk.co.uk, the history of Exeter's Pram and Toy Shop. It seems that it was originally founded in 1909 on Sidwell Street in Exeter as Exeter Cycle Works, and that it continued trading all the way up until the late 2000s. There's lots of great photos and other information on the site, so if this is your kind of thing, maybe check that out. The other interesting thing is the price, £17.95. Well, I put that into the Bank of England inflation calculator. And according to it, £17.95 in 1979 would be £82.45 today. So Boris was a very expensive toy. The other thing that struck me as being interesting about this was that Boris is by Corgi, and I think somewhere else on the box, yes, here it is, it mentions Metoy Northampton Limited. Now, Metoy were, I think, owners of Corgi or part of Corgi or something. I'm not quite sure how it worked. But Metoy, of course, were the company that brought us the Dragon 32. Dragon Data spun out of Metoy in the 80s to make us the Dragon 32. So it's a lot of kind of vintage, retro, electronic history about our friend here, Boris. Okay, so let's get him opened up and see what's going on. So here we have a piece of cardboard with an important note on it: don't throw away. This is a ramp, it's part of the game as I understand it. I never had one of these as a kid, but I understand that that is part of the game. It's just a normal kind of piece of cardboard with a fold in it. There are some instructions, which is really nice, and we'll take a look at those in a minute. And a mat, a play mat. Quite heavy gauge, kind of polythene, heavyweight polythene. I don't know, it's quite thick. That's what I'm trying to say. And our gun. It's stuck in there. There we go, our gun. And our spider himself, Boris. So here's our gun. The seller did say, in fact, the gun was working because the red LED works. So let's pull the trigger in. Indeed it does. The LED works. I don't see any visible light coming out of the gun itself. Now, it could be a kind of infrared style remote control LED or something like that. So I don't think that's going to show on the camera either, but it might show on the camera. I sometimes shoot a little bit of B-roll on. So we'll aim it at that and we'll see if we can see if there's any kind of infrared coming out of this gun when we pull the trigger. And in fact there is. I think you can just about see that. There we go, on the camera there. It seems it's not constant, so if you press it, this one is instant, it kind of comes on straight away and then goes off when you release it. The one inside does not. It's can you press it once and then it's on for a set period of time. Doesn't seem to be working at all now. So the gun seems to work, but the trigger is a little sticky, and sometimes it kind of wedges on like that. If you see, it doesn't spring back. And because of that, it stays kind of latched and won't refire. So there's something we need to take a look at in there just to loosen that up. We'll check the voltage on the battery as well, and then we'll pop that aside and have a look at the spider itself. Well, let's open this up, get the battery out. Bit stiff. Oh, very stiff. Just a little bit stiff, perhaps I wasn't quite bold enough, or maybe it was just caught on the bottom of the battery there. There we go. Wow. You've got to work at this. It's a Pro Cell battery. Yeah. Let's pop the multimeter on it and see what the voltage is. 9.4 volts. So yeah, this is probably a good battery. It's like there's some corrosion on the battery terminal itself, and we probably need to clean that off. That's obviously not getting a very good electrical connection there. We'll be taking this apart in a minute anyway, just to see what's going on with this trigger. So we'll pop those aside and take a look at Boriss. Boriss also has batteries, by the looks of it, by the weight of it. Certainly these are energizers, and wheels on the bottom. I think there's a 9 volt in there somewhere as well. Yeah, that's kind of nestling in there too. So battery, oh goodness, battery contacts look clean, and the batteries are in the correct orientation. So we'll pop those back in, and let's turn him on. Oh, he was turned on. I suppose if you're going to turn him on, that's the place to do it. Anyway, turned on or not, Boriss is doing absolutely nothing. So let's have a look at the bottom here. It looks like some of these screws have been tampered with. Somebody's been inside of my Boriss. But yeah, let's do the battery check. Yeah, 1.6 volts. These are looking good too. Good, so at least I got reasonable batteries for my 30-some pounds, 25 plus 6 shipping. And we'll just take a look here at the 9 volt, and yeah, that's a very loose connection. If you look at that, it's not engaged on the kind of, it's touching, it's probably making contact, but it's not kind of clipped onto the battery at all there. I hope it's not as simple as that. I hope it's not a case of that just not being in place. That would be terrible. I don't know if you can see that in another repair video, that really there's nothing to repair. Can you see? That is just kind of sitting there. Anyway, we'll measure the voltage on the battery. And the battery voltage is 9.6 volts, so that's great. Just kind of tighten those up a little bit and just try it again with those battery contacts tightened. Just going to squeeze these a little tighter. So hopefully they make better contact, or at least some kind of engagement with the battery terminal itself there. There we go. Yeah, that's more promising. We'll pop that back inside of Boriss. Pop the batteries back inside for the motive power. I'm guessing the 9 volt works the electronics, and the kind of 4.5 volts, sorry, 6 volts you get from these will drive Boriss himself, and then we'll try it again. We'll leave him turned off, create a bit of suspense. Perhaps not very much suspense, but it's worth a go. We'll turn him on. No. So it wasn't that, which is good because it means I've got something to repair. We'll zoom out a bit and we'll open Boriss up. Yeah, nothing. His wheel's a bit wobbly too. So as I say, some of these screws are a bit gnarled. Now, some of them were user removable, so you'd expect some of those to be kind of, you know, perhaps a little bit chewed up, but in fact the ones that are chewed up in the bottom of Boriss here are not the ones that are holding this kind of rubber spider cover in place. Oh, there we are, look. Look at that. A few bits fallen out. It's kind of interesting hole there. It's almost like it's been kind of burnt through. That really doesn't... Does that look like that's supposed to be there? Can you see that? I don't know. Let's zoom in a little bit. Push these washers out of the way. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that to be there. I don't know if you can see that there. You can see that on the camera right through. Very kind of rough edge. Battery compartment, bottom of the battery compartment. I really don't know why that would be there. It almost looks like somebody's kind of stuck something hot through there. There is a incandescent bulb holder here. It should have a bulb in, which it does not. There is a... Boris's wheel is a bit wobbly. It looks like there's a piece of plastic broken or come loose in there that we need to take a look at. There's no indication of why it doesn't work that I can see immediately. Oh, there's some kind of exposed wire here. That looks like it's for the LED display. It looks like maybe that's been trapped somewhere here and kind of rubbed away. It's a bit melted. Yeah, that's not good. That looks like it's been melted by a soldering iron. That would be my guess. And, oh, we have a loose wire. Haha. Yes, we have a loose wire here. That's interesting. It looks like, though, it's a lot of connectors on there, on that switch. I don't know which one of those it would go to. But looking at it, it looks like only one has some solder residue on, so I'm guessing that should go on there. But let's take a look at this wheel first, and maybe this incandescent lamp as well. We're going to have to take the printed circuit assembly away to do that. Well, on that board, we do have a couple of ICs and quite a few transistors there. And then there's two chips on here, an MC14011B maybe, and then another one, an MC14069UB. So I'm not sure what those are. Maybe I can look those up. If I push those aside now, we can see, I think, a bit better what's going on with the wheel. It's real fiddly to get to. Yeah, actually, I think it'd be easier if we took this eyes assembly off, if that will come away, which it probably will. So let's do that. Okay, fabulous. Yeah, we can get everything in there now and see what's going on quite clearly. There's a little plastic piece holding one axle in here, and then another one should be in here holding this axle in place, and it's come away. So we'll pop that back in. We'll tighten the other one up too, and I think we'll be okay then. And backwards to drop into the thread and tighten it up. Perfect. And we're going to do the same on this one. This is a bit loose too. I don't know if I'm cutting a new thread there or not. I think maybe I am. But that seems much better than before. Wonderful. So Boris is freewheeling again. Marvellous. We'll hook that back up onto the front. Looks like two LEDs just in there. Red LEDs for the eyes. Okay, a bit tight. So we have our rogue red wire here, which I'm assuming goes onto the one pin that has some solder left on it. So we'll go on there with that. So that took me absolutely ages. This really didn't want to stick, but with a bit of flux, it did eventually. I obviously should have put flux on there from the very start, and then it probably would have soldered up quite nicely without a problem. Anyway, I think that's probably going to be it apart from our lighty up bit. So maybe we'll turn our attention to the gun before we put batteries in this and see if it's actually fixed. So here then is our gun. Obviously, very corroded battery contacts. Oh, in fact, actually it's kind of broken off in my hands. I don't know if you saw that. Just kind of crumbled away. So yeah, battery connector is not great. And also this trigger is sticking in the kind of on position. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. Again, looks like the screws have been gnarled. We'll probably just open this one up and see what's inside. Is that going to be enough? I feel like there's more than that, but I don't see any screws anywhere. So really hoping I can get this to come apart. Yeah, slowly. Maybe this is 2 pieces. There's more electronics in there. I really don't want to damage this. Oh. Aha! Aha! Ha, ha. Okay, so the lens part comes off. You can see the LED in the bottom, and then presumably, yeah, it just comes apart. Lovely. Now, why is this trigger stiff? Well, I think it probably just needs a little bit of lubrication. Switch seems okay. The spring is intact, so there is a spring in there that you can see. Switch is okay. We'll clean those contacts off with a little bit of emery cloth. Anyway, there's an IC in here as well. This is a MC14011B. So the MC14011B was the same chip that was being used in Boriss. And I didn't backwards engineer the circuits, but my theory is that they are being used as a NAND gate timer. And in the case of the gun, is probably being used to hold on the infrared LED for a fixed period of time every time the trigger is pressed. So you can't just keep the trigger permanently pressed and aim the gun at Boriss. So I think the trigger just needs a little bit of grease before we reassemble it, but we do need to do something with this corroded and broken battery contact. So a little while ago I bought a job lot of pocket calculators. I haven't got around to fixing them yet, but I decided I was going to need some of these. So that is fortunate because it means I can just replace the crusty one that's on here. Wires aren't going to be quite long enough, so I'll just cut them some way and solder them together, I think. So this is a fairly simple process, of course. I just snipped the existing wires about halfway down, stripped back the insulation on each, slipped a piece of heat shrink tubing onto each wire, and then soldered the red wire of the new battery connector to the existing red wire of the gun, the black wire to the existing black wire of the gun. With hindsight, I should have checked that the red wire was positive and the black wire was negative before soldering them together, but it turned out that that was in fact the case, so I got away with it, though it would have been better if I'd checked beforehand. After I'd soldered each joint, I slipped the heat shrink tubing over it and then heated it to shrink it in place. I'm going to clean off this electrical connection here as well, and for that I'm just going to use a little emery board. These are some cheap ones that I got from a hotel I stayed in one time. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of plastic safe grease on these pins and we'll reassemble the gun. I like to cut the end off a cotton bud. It's kind of handy for things like that. I think that is going to stop everything sticking. At least that's my hope. Well, initial impressions are good. Let's get everything fastened back together. Okay, well, it's time to test Boriss. I think the way it worked, well, actually, let's get the instructions out and have a look how it's supposed to work. So let's take a quick look at Boriss's instructions. There's instructions about installing the battery. Obviously, we've done that. And then about positioning Boriss on the ramp and the mat. Well, we're not going to do that just yet. I'm just going to see if he's working. Switch on Boriss and place him on the mat. In front of the ramp, Boriss will come towards you. Aim the photon phaser between Boriss's eyes and fire. If you miss, Boriss will keep coming towards you for 5 seconds, then he will pause before resuming his advance. Shoot Boris between his eyes and watch his body glow as he retreats screeching. Well, his body's not going to glow because we don't have a bulb in there at the moment. That would be an incandescent bulb, and, well, we don't have one. And, of course, the wire's a bit frayed, so I probably wouldn't want to put one in just yet anyway. The photon phaser beam only affects Boris when he comes towards you. Well, that's good to know. And the quicker you are at shooting Boris, the further he retreats. Shoot him after 1 second, he will retreat for 4 seconds. Shoot him after 2 seconds, he will retreat for 3 seconds. Photon phaser's beam is active for 1 second at a time. To reactivate, release a trigger and press again. The red light on the photon phaser indicates the beam is active. I see. Drive Boris backwards over the ramp and into the pit, and you've defeated Boris. Okay, fair enough. You can make it more difficult to shoot Boris by reducing the diameter of the beam by turning the focus knob. Ah, okay, so I guess that's this knob here. So I guess one setting is easy, or easier, and one is more difficult. I don't know which is which. There's some technical information too. Photon phaser gives out an invisible infrared beam that is completely safe. That's good to know. The bulb in Boris's body can be replaced by removing the outer cover. Well, the bulb's missing, but never mind. Batteries should be removed before storing Boris for prolonged periods. Alkaline batteries are recommended for maximum range and performance. The traction batteries, HP7 or equivalent, will likely need replacing before the 2 control batteries, the PP3s or equivalent. So obviously you need to replace the AA's before the PP3s. That makes a lot of sense. And then before replacing batteries, ensure they are inserted correctly and making good contact. I don't know how you do that before you're replacing batteries. Well, maybe what they mean is before you go to the expense of replacing the batteries with new ones, you check the existing ones are inserted correctly and making good contact. Maybe that's what it's suggesting. Anyway, in big bold print, no license is required to operate Boris. Well, that's good news, isn't it? And then the Metoy Company Limited, Swansea Industrial Estate, Queensway, Swansea, which I'm guessing is where or whereabouts the Dragon 32 was made at one point. Anyway, so that's it for our Boriss instructions. Let's switch him on and give him a go. Well, I think it kind of works. Looks maybe a bit weak, but it's very brightly lit in here, and I wonder if, oh, Boris, I wonder if that's some of the problem. Makes a horrendous noise, though. So we need to work out what's going on with this incandescent bulb. It's supposed to light when Boris is reversing, but it doesn't. The connection to the bulb is quite badly damaged there, and I want to know what voltage that is so that I can maybe put an LED in there or something instead of buying another incandescent bulb. So we're going to prop Boris up on something and we'll give it a go and see if we can measure what that voltage is. Okay, so I have my multimeter here set to DC volts. I've got the probes there with a couple of clip wires on them, the yellow one to the positive. So we'll connect those now up to Boris. I'll put the yellow one on the yellow wire. That's going to the positive on my meter. So if we get a positive number, we'll know the yellow wire is a positive, and then the green one can go on the black connector there. Okay, so we need to prop Boris up. I've got some blue tack here. Just keep him off the floor so he doesn't wheel away from us. Let's do that, and then we'll turn him on. See what he does. Okay, so it looks like we're getting about 2.5 volts. Of course, it only lights up when he's going backwards, so we need to shoot him. There we go. 2.5 volts. So instead of using an incandescent bulb here, I'd like to use a white LED. I don't think white LEDs were much of a thing when this originally came out, or maybe it would have had an LED anyway, since it already has red LEDs for the eyes. But yeah, this cable's frayed, and this one I think can just pull out. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to pull the black wire out and snip it off. And then the yellow wire we'll snip off at the bottom of the bulb holder. So I have a couple of different types of LEDs here. I have a larger one, you can see that on the camera, fairly large white LED, and then some smaller ones. I have a lot more of the smaller ones, so I'm probably going to use those just because this really isn't worth a lot of money. The larger one might work better, might be brighter, but I think since I have so many of these, I'm just going to use these. Now, if I was running these off a larger voltage, I'd probably want to put a current limiting resistor in here to make sure that we're not overdriving that LED. But I think these are 3.5 volt LEDs anyway, so even with a fresh set of batteries, I doubt we're going to get more than that here. Probably don't need a resistor in line, but let's check and see what current this is drawing. So we're going to connect this up now to my bench power supply, and I think the cathode, that is the negative lead, because these are polarity dependent, unlike the incandescent bulb that was there before. And I think the cathode is the shorter lead, so that's the negative, and then the anode would be the positive, and that would be the longer lead. And then I've got my bench power supply set to about 3 volts. We'll just sit that there a second. You can see it properly, away from Boriss. Oops, probably should have used a finer crocodile clip for that. We'll try that again. Yeah, that's going to do fine, I think. So it is actually quite bright. Head on, and we'll aim that towards the front of our Boriss. Let's just take a look at the current measurement from that. And at 3 volts, it's drawing roughly 20 milliamps, which feels about right. So once again, I think this yellow wire is going to be plenty long enough without the kind of melted bit, so we can remove that. We'll strip the ends of these two a little bit. Fantastic, and then we'll solder them on to the legs of our LED here, but I'm going to put a little bit of heat shrink tubing on first, and we'll just slide these over here. Then when we've made the solder joint, we can move them back into place. I just kind of shoved the LED in to the old bulb holder there. I might try and bend it a little bit so it points a bit more towards the front, kind of level with Boriss's eyes. I think that's going to be fine. We'll probably pop a bit of hot melt in there just to kind of hold it in place. So I did use a little hot glue to hold the LED in place, but unfortunately I lost the video footage of that. So I think all we need to do now is put Boriss back together and give him a test. So hopefully nobody minds me talking over Boriss's screeching. The game works exactly as described. When you power up Boriss, he advances towards you. If you shoot him whilst he's advancing towards you, he retreats, and the sooner after he started advancing that you shoot him, the further he retreats. The game ends when either Boriss reaches you, or retreats behind the cardboard ramp which is hidden under the polythene sheet, and then he can't get back over it. So some of you might be aware that Boriss has a namesake in British politics, but I really don't have any strong political views one way or another, so I've deliberately shied away from any reference to politics within the video. This is, after all, just a bit of fun. I'll play. Oops. And back. And off we come with the lid.